Welcome to the Illustration Initiative's new interview series. Today, I am here speaking with Chiara Fedele, who's speaking to me from Italy. And she is an illustrator that I worked with for many years on many books. And today she is going to speak to you all about her journey as an illustrator, how she got started, and specifically how she works as a traditional illustrator in the current market and how she adds some digital techniques to that to make it special and current and work with different clients and publishers depending on their needs. So Chiara, I was wondering if you you want to introduce yourself for a moment?
Yeah, I am Chiara Fedele. I am an illustrator from Italy, and I work with Astound, an agency in New York. So I work with many American and US and worldwide publisher. So thanks for inviting me, Emily.
Yeah, no, it's really good to have you. I think that it would be great if you just talk about how you got into illustration to begin with.
Yeah, I just, I love painting and drawing since I was a child. So, and I love books, illustrated books too. So I studied art in high school here in Italy, and then I took a degree in illustration in a private school here in Italy. And so has been kind of natural go into the illustration world. So I started to go in the fairs, but the very first job was for educational books. So that has been my very beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's, we have people who are illustrators who are self-taught, and then we have illustrators who went to school for it. And I think people have very different experiences with those two options. So if you go to school for illustration, you kind of have a deeper understanding of all different types of art. And I think that's really valuable. What was your first project that really stood out to you? What was a project that you really enjoyed working on, or that was really special for you in your career?
Well, my first book
Mm-hmm.
was it was a picture book, because I used to work as an illustrator in educational, and at the time educational was in traditional. So that's
yeah, I know, I wouldn't think that. Yeah.
So, but I stopped to do that, and I tried to do some picture books. Okay. So I made a very little portfolio, and I went to Frankfurt Book Fair, okay, where I met my first publisher. That was a Greek publisher, Patakis publisher. Yeah. And I started to work with them with my first album that was called Bibliopontikas. That it means the library book, the library mouse, not the library. Yeah.
That's really cute.
Yeah, and we are still friends. Sometimes we met in Bologna book fair, and I still work with them sometimes.
That's really good. I know when you came to Astound, you had already done books. You were not new to books. You had many illustrations in your portfolio, and they were all really beautiful. They all looked painted. So what kind of mediums do you use when you illustrate a book?
I basically use watercolor, okay, because it is my favorite technique, and but I love to mix together. So I use watercolor, gouache, and colored pencil. Okay. Sometimes I use pen ball, but in my very old illustrations.
Okay.
Not now.
And is that the way you most enjoy using watercolor for your illustrations?
Yeah, it's that's my favorite way to illustrate. Yeah.
Yeah. And when you illustrate a book, I think before we get into more about, specific projects and things, I really want to start by giving people the good information. So
Yeah.
if you want to speak about that process, so a publisher hires you for a book and they give you the briefs and the layouts and the dimensions of what the size of the illustration should be, and you see the text. And when you actually start working on the illustration, it's all traditional, correct?
Well, lately I used to do the storyboard in digital
Okay.
because the storyboard is always the time and the drawing that needs amends or some
Okay.
corrections. So, it's a question of time sometimes.
Yeah. Mhm.
So it's just very fast way.
Mhm.
Uh, but if I have time, I can do it traditional with pencils,
Okay.
graffiti. For example, I just did one project with pencils, the storyboard,
Mhm.
because it was a very big project. So I had to do with very detailed and thinking on it. So I enjoyed to do with the pencil. And
Okay.
then when they made correction and reviews,
Mhm.
I start with the artwork, and I start with the paper and the watercolor, gouache, and pencils. And then I scan it, and that's my scanner.
Yeah.
And a very high quality scanner is better. And then I edit something because now the market requires some very, very clean things. So I
Mhm.
just clean the paper, redo some details, made it more clear. That's the edit I do.
And
And yeah,
and the edits are um done digitally, or you truly do?
digitally. Yeah,
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 okay. Mhm.
digitally. Yeah, sorry.
And do you do anything else at the digital phase that helps with anything? Like, do you give it any sort of extra texture, or do you play with the colors at that stage on digital?
Well, I try to edit the image like the color, the contrast, especially the contrast and saturation, some little things that improve and make the color brighter, for example.
Mhm.
The dark, that I use a lot of dark in my
Yeah.
illustrations. So I edit the dark in the way is more visible.
So many different ways you can edit these these
Yeah.
things. But we'll figure that out. I think I understand what you're saying. So when you're on there, what program do you use to do
I
these
use
edits?
I use just Photoshop.
Photoshop. Okay.
Yeah.
Mhm. And
And the I use the iPad to do the pencils,
okay.
because it's very, very easy
Yeah.
to
Mhm.
use.
Yeah, I think Photoshop's pretty friendly for the user. You can
Yeah.
do more and more with it, the better you get
Yeah.
to know it, but it's pretty easy to use. I thought I would talk about one of the first books, or maybe not one of the first books, but one of the books along our journey together, where I agented this book you did called A Fall Ball for All with Learner Publishing. And
Yeah.
I'm just bringing it up because I was reading the Kirkus review, which I'll link to in this video. And I thought this kind of explained your process very well, where it says there are plenty of animals to spot in the soft yet vibrant mixed media illustrations that combine the use of watercolor, tempera, and colored pencils with digital retouching. And this was back in 2018. And right before this, when we were speaking on our own, you were talking to me about one of your newer books that came out this month, or last month now, November 2021. And this was The Rabbi and the Reverend.
Yeah.
And it would be great to hear a little bit about how you worked on that book as opposed to books before, because it's really interesting that you have a few different styles.
Yeah, the Rabbi and the Reverend is a completely digital book. I mean, I work in digital. Sometimes the client asks that. So because it's better for them, because maybe they have some amendments to do, or the layout are not ready, so they are changing the size or the place of the illustration. So they prefer only digital. And I can do it only digital too. I mean, so I find this way to do the digital is very natural because I use a kind of paper. Yeah, I use a kind of paper, and then I use these flat colors on it. And this kind of book, this book specifically, was in the 60. That is the story of Martin Luther King and this rabbi. So it was very nice to do this color palette, very digital. I mean, I enjoy it so much.
Yeah, I think they wrote really good things about your art, about this book as well, where they said they loved the contrast that you used. There are darker colors in the book, but it works because it's very of the era of the 1960s America color palette that you might have seen then. And it's very nostalgic, but also very emotional. And I think it really did work with this style that you said. It is a bit flatter than your other style that has a bit more depth and more contouring of the faces and such. Here it's a little flatter when it comes to the faces, but the emotion's still there. And both styles, both traditional and digital, you managed to make it look, honestly, I don't know if I would have been able to tell it was digital, which is the cool part about it. You must have manipulated it somehow if you had made it traditional and into digital, but I think you do that very well, which is such a trend right now because of exactly what you said. So traditional artists are working in digital media if the client needs them to, because of all those things like the editing, the redoing, the different formats. They might be printing the book in, so they need to be able to move it around the images in a different way. And they want all that, but they want it to look like someone did it traditionally.
Yeah.
So I think, they don't want it to look like it was done on a computer. It's just, I mean, there are books that are like that right now, but I do think people are asking for artists who are traditional artists who can kind of do the digital version. But there are definitely still clients who are asking for traditional illustrators too, because you are still doing those sort of books, right?
Yeah, it's in this moment there's a lot of requests for me of a traditional book, media. I just finished one for Carben.
Oh, cool.
In traditional, and I just finished in these days the big one I am working on, and is in traditional. It's a story. I can tell you.
Let's hear about it.
It's a story written by Julie Andrews and her daughter Emma Walton Hamilton.
Okay.
Yeah. It's a very important one, and they wanted in traditional, so has been a very hard work. Yeah,
that's amazing. And do we know when that will come out? Did they tell you how long it'll take to be actually printed and in stores?
Yeah, I think in autumn 2022.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have about a year, but it's good for people to know about that too. Just because you finish a book or you're working on a book doesn't mean you will see it for a long time.
No.
You might not see the book in your hands for a year or even 2 years after you finish it. And
it's a very long time working on. Yeah, I took a very long time to work on the book, and they're taking lots of time to finish in the book. So it's a very long job.
And how long does it usually take you to illustrate a full 32-page book or so?
Well,
No, that's a
the
complicated question.
time
There's
is
so many
always
different,
very,
yeah.
the deadline, the deadlines
Because,
are always very thick. So,
yeah.
yeah. So, but usually take 3-4 months.
Mhm.
Something more, because there are time moments in where the publisher take the time to review, and so they keep the rough for a while, and then they send me back. So, but around 6 months to complete a book.
Yeah, and I think that's also important for people to know is that you get all the information to start the book, and then you do the sketches, or sometimes the storyboard, and then send that in for approval, and then sketches more detailed, send that in for approval. And there's all this waiting time when they have it. But if you're Chiara and many other illustrators who are working, you're probably using that time to work on your other books that you're doing at
Yes,
the same
exactly.
time. Right. So when you say you're doing that, a book, sometimes you're doing more than one book at a time, right?
Yes. In this period of time, I had the lucky to do more than one books in the same time.
Yeah.
I know that this is not really something happening for a long time or
Yeah.
to everybody,
Mhm.
but in these 2-3 years, I working on 2-3 books in the same
Wow.
time.
Yeah, that's really good, but that's a lot. It's a lot of
Yeah, that's a lot.
people don't realize how much time it takes to become an illustrator who is like you. Like, people know your name in the industry. If we go to different publishers, they usually have seen your art or seen your books before. And I do think that comes from the fact that you do take on a lot at the same time, and you do so many books for different publishers. And you also do books that have high profiles, as in subject matter that is important to people, or cultural issues, or like this new celebrity book, which I'm very excited to see when it
Yeah.
comes out. We'll share the link to that too, if there's any information.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's very exciting. And when it actually comes out, we'll circle back and we'll do another interview or something. But that sounds like a really important project, and it's very exciting that that's what's coming out soon for you. So in addition to that, are there any other books you have coming out soon?
Yes. I'm working on a beautiful book, because these are my favorite stories, like The Rabbi and the Reverend, and is the story of Rosalind Franklin. That is the scientist that discovered the shape of DNA.
That's amazing.
And it's something that it's a story that passionate me, because she was kind of the merit the merit has done to 3 men,
Wow.
not to her.
Okay.
So the other scientist won the Nobel Prize on something she discovered.
Yeah.
So that's a story that's passionate me a lot. So
That's so important. I think that's something I've been loving right now. Trending is this whole like revealing how women were actually the ones who did all these things in history. We had another illustrator that I represented who did a book on another woman who did so many things. I'm interviewing her in the next interview after you in January. And she was really behind the whole New Deal in the United States, which was a really huge deal during the Depression. And it was really a woman who really pulled that all together, but no one knew. The men got all the credit. So it's really nice to hear these stories about scientists and things, and have children. Children will be able to read these books and learn about how women were the ones who actually did it. And the new generations will think that was normal. They'll think that women were doing this the whole time, and that's better. So
that's very important. Children must know, and education is very important about this issue. Yeah, that's why I'm very happy to working on this book from Beaming Books.
Beaming
from,
Books. Yeah, they're really
yeah.
good. I really like their books. They come out with really good quality books. So yeah, we'll have to share that one as well. That yeah, those are you have a lot of really exciting books
Yeah.
coming.
And I just I took some time because last year was worse,
Yeah,
the job I had, so now I'm just a little bit relaxing.
that's good.
So,
Yeah. So even during like the whole COVID time, you were working as an illustrator.
yeah, yes, I did.
Yeah,
Yes.
publishers didn't
And
stop.
yeah.
And for those recent books, for the scientist book, was that done digitally or traditionally?
This one is like the Rabbi and the Reverend, all
Okay,
digital. Yes,
okay,
they
great.
choose that kind of style,
Mhm.
and I send them all the illustrations from the Rabbi and the Reverend. They like it a lot, so
Yeah.
they choose this way. But I like it. I like digital too.
Mhm.
It's not a problem for me
Yeah.
working just in digital.
Mhm.
I like all the ways.
Yeah. Do you think it takes you about the same time, or is it a little faster or easier to do digital, or do you find it easier to do watercolor?
It's a little bit faster, not
Okay,
easiest, but a little bit
a little
faster. Faster,
faster.
yes, yes.
Mhm. Yeah, it's good to understand that because I think, you've been doing the books the way you've been doing them for so long. I'm sure it's like you're just pretty fast at that anyway, but it's good to try new things. And I think in our last interview, we talked about letting your style evolve with time because illustrators, they may always, it's very clear, even the new style, even the digital style looks like you. I would definitely be like, that's Chiara's work. But I do think it's important to let yourself evolve like that because then you stay contemporary and interesting to publishers and it feels fresh and new. And all publishers enjoy keeping working with the same illustrators. They tend to like to work with the same illustrators they
Mhm.
worked with before, but the number one concern they have, and they've told me this in meetings, is that well, we can't have all of our books be, that one illustrator. Like they would love to work with illustrators like you just again and again and have you do all of their books, but they have to have some change, some difference. So I think when you can find another way to work with the publishers you like, and if it's something like doing digital work because it has a little bit of a point of difference, it can be good to keep you like fresh in the sales team's minds at publishers as well. And you sadly do have to think about that. But I think it's good because you've been doing one style for so long, trying something new, doing this digital way is really exciting.
Yeah, yeah. I can't help to evolve every time I do a book. There's always some changes in my illustrations in every book I do. Sometimes maybe the people who read the books don't notice that, but I know that.
Yeah,
So
you know. And I think people should visit your Instagram page, which I'll put on here because you can just see all the different types of work you do because you do everything from picture books all the way through book covers and editorial. Do you do any editorial or advertising work?
no advertising, not, and sometimes very little editorial.
Okay.
But in the past, now I'm doing just books
Yeah, you're too
or
busy.
covers. I do covers, yes.
Yeah, I love your book covers. I think they're always so beautiful. And just the work you do on your own for your own self is also really nice to see.
When I have the time,
Yeah,
yes,
when you
I love to do some little paintings, and I love to do art prints.
yeah,
Uh,
because you're also just a wonderful artist in your own right, completely separate from the children's book illustration. Your actual art is beautiful. You could have gone either way. You probably could have been a professional painter or a book artist, but you've decided to spend more of your time on books. So
yeah.
yeah. And just to wrap this up, is there anything you can give for advice to new illustrators or aspiring illustrators? Anything you think they should know?
I thought about this question, and I think that in this moment, be fast is something that is very, it's a way to work. But I think taking your time is very important, Learning every techniques you like, every painting techniques is important. So and drawing and trying to find your own voice while you're drawing and painting. And so take your time and don't hurry your work. That's my advice.
It's really good advice. I can say I've been doing these one-on-one coaching consultations with illustrators, and everyone gets to a point where we've been working on the sketches, and I'm having them go further with the sketches, and then we go to color, and they think they're done. And I'm like, wait. I'm like, I don't even want to see this until Monday. I want to give you more time to work on this, and I want you to sleep on it and then look at it again the next day, because you might see something in your work that's different, or maybe you've been looking at it too long and you need to just step away from your work for a minute to be able to really see it for what it is and make the changes or however you want to proceed with it. But sometimes I think people, they're going so fast and they're doing so much that they're putting together a lot of work that isn't as good or isn't really them, because they just think, I'm going to do this, get it done, get the money. But I think it's worth taking the time as well and stepping back and letting yourself experiment with different styles and different mediums and find what you really enjoy, since you'll be doing this for a career if that's what you choose to do. But also when you are working on your own pieces, or even illustrations for your jobs, for your books, that you do spend the time and that you try to ask for those deadlines and such when you're negotiating the deal, so that you don't feel rushed during it or have to ask for more time during it. It's better to ask at the beginning and give like realistic deadlines, because that gets everyone into trouble.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that's really good advice.
Because in your job you don't have time, so when you learn, it's important to take in your time when you have time.
Yeah, and to take that process of learning very seriously.
Yeah,
and have fun, but just also know that really giving every illustration or painting you have it's time. Focus on that is good, and not just rushing from one thing to the next. It just never seems to work out the way people think it will. Thank you so much for speaking with us today, and
thank you
I hope
so
to
much.
have you back. Yeah. Thank you, Chiara.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you.